This is the lesson for Chapter 2, Section 4, rotations. And so we're breaking this into 2 different days, and here we're going to rotate about the origin of the axes. And so we're rotating about 0, 0. And so what we're going to end up doing when we rotate is we've got to look first of all about which direction we're rotating. And we either rotate clockwise, and I have a little clock up over here showing clockwise, and sometimes we'll shorten that up to CW for clockwise, or we could rotate counterclockwise. And then when we rotate, we also talk about degrees in which we rotate. So I've got this clock here, and if we just go one quarter space over, that's 90 degrees. 2 quarter spaces over to this point would be 180 degrees. 3 quarter spaces would be 270 degrees. And so those are the different degrees that we're going to be dealing with. If we went 360, we'd end right back to where we started. Now, another good thing to remember as we are making these rotations is the quadrants, since we're going to be dealing with those quite often. The first quadrant is up here, and whenever we're dealing with the first quadrant, we always have positive numbers. X and Y are always positive, and that'll help us figure out what those values are if that's where we're rotating to. From there, the second quadrant is in this location here, just to the left, and so those values have negative X values and positive Y values. And quadrant 3 is down below, and that has both negative and X's and negative Y's. And then quadrant 4 is in the lower right-hand side, and that has just negative Y's. X's are positive. So we're going to remember that as we try to rotate things. And here, for the first one, we're rotating 90 degrees clockwise. And so clockwise tells us we're going to the right. So basically what's going to happen is this is going to rotate to this next quadrant, just one space. And so when it does that, basically we're going to rotate this entire axis here. And so when we do so, right now the y-axis is right here, but when we rotate this side up, when it goes up here, this is going to become our positive y-axis. So as you can see, this unit right here, if this is our positive y, this would be our negative y-axis. And look where the image is. The figure is a solid figure. It's not going to move at all, except it's going to stay rigid like that, except it's going to rotate about this origin here. So as you can see, A is going to end up moving to this spot right here. And so if it does that, B would end up moving down below it, the same number of spaces. And so it looks like it's 1, 2, 3 spaces. So 1, 2, 3. So this will be A, this will be B, and if you notice, C is right at a right angle to it, and it is pointing up towards the top. Well, when we rotate this, it's going to rotate right into this spot here. That's where it will be. And so when we do that, we want to kind of compare these different values and see what maybe a rule could be for this. And so if we look at the A values here and compare them, or X's and Y's, and compare them to how the image is, the X's and Y's for the image, if we look at just the A value to start with, we see that is 1, 1. And the A prime, which we'll call right there, this is C prime, A prime is going to 1, negative 1. So you can see how it rotated down into the X, or the fourth quadrant. B is at 4, 1. So we're at 4, 1 there. And where it goes, well, B ends up becoming 1, negative 4. And then the C value, C ends up being, is initially 4, 3. And where it goes, well, it goes to C prime, which ends up being 4 spaces, actually 3 spaces to the right, but 4 spaces down. So let's see if we can figure out a rule from this. If we look at probably this one here, B or C, we see that B is 4, or X is 4, and Y is 1. Over here, they switch. X is 1, Y is negative 4. So the rule would be that the values switch. But notice how the X value switched sign also. You can see that here. 4 became negative 4. So it's going to be Y, negative 4 is our rule for 90-degree clockwise rotations. Counterclockwise rotations mean that it's going the opposite direction of a clock. And so it's going to end up bringing it over in this direction. And so when we do that, this x-axis is going to switch to the top over here, while the y-axis will end up coming down over on this side, the negative x. And so when we do this, we're going to end up seeing how this c value is going to end up rotating over and will be over on this side, where a and b will be alongside the new y-axis. And so if you look at it, this will become the y-axis, and this side here will become the x-axis. This is how it will rotate, because this x, this negative y, is going to rotate up to this spot. So if you picture that, you see how a and b are parallel with this new y-axis when we rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees. And so you see a is going to end up being here, where b is going to end up being right here. So if you picture this, this axis here is rotating up 90 degrees to this point. Well, a and b kind of just follow it up. And so this is going to be b prime, this is going to be a prime, c, well, c is just to the left of b once we rotate it. See how c is right there? It's going to rotate over, so there's c prime. So that's what our image with the 90-degree counterclockwise rotation is going to look like. So let's take a look at those points. So a is 1, 1 again. B, these are all the same points, 4, 1. C is 4, 3. And let's see where they went. So a prime, well, that became negative 1, 1. B prime, well, that became negative 1, 4. And C prime, well, that became a negative 3, 4. And so what happened? Well, what's the rule? Well, if I look at x and y, this is the original, when we do the reflection, the numbers switch again. The x value becomes the y value becomes the x. But notice how this time the y value changes sign. Same thing here. This 1 changes sign. So what we're going to say is it's negative y, x. And that is the rule. So let's take a look at one other type of rotation that we'll see on tonight's homework, and that is a 180-degree rotation. So 180 degrees means that this y value here is going to go all the way around to the bottom. So what's going to happen? Well, a is on the top here, but then it'll be on the bottom of it when we go ahead and rotate it. So we're going to end up seeing a over here, and we can actually it will be over on this side here, and we can see that because I know it's going to be in the fourth quadrant, because here if we go over one quadrant it's 90, two quadrants it's going to end up being 180 degrees. And so when we go ahead and rotate it, notice how B and C are closest to the side down here. That's going to maintain that same situation. And notice how C is in the first quadrant. Well, if it goes to the fourth, that's 90 degrees. If it goes to the third, that will end up being 180 degrees. So we see that A and B are going to be right alongside the y-axis here. So when we go ahead and rotate this down to this spot here. And C, well, that's going to rotate following B, and it's going to rotate all the way over to this spot over here. And then we're going to go ahead and draw it in there. And that's what we see. So this is now C prime, this is B prime, and this is A prime. And when we go ahead and take a look at these coordinates to see if there's a little rule about it, we see that A, the original A, was 1 or negative 1, 4. B was negative 1, 1. C is 1, 1. And where did they go? Well, A prime went down here at 1, 4, or 1, negative 4, that is. And then B prime ended up being at 1, negative 1. And C prime, well, that ended up at negative 1, negative 1. So what happened? Well, let's take a look at the x's and the y's. It's best to look at one that's different numbers, like this one here, like A. Negative 1 and 4. Notice this time they didn't switch. 1 is still here, 4 is here, but notice that the signs switch. Negative 1 to 1, 4 to negative 4. So the rule is this for 180 degrees about the origin, is that the x and y values stay the same position, but the signs switch, so it becomes a negative y, negative x. Let's take a look at one more 180 degree rotation. Notice how we are in the third quadrant. So when we rotate, we're going to end up going through the 90 all the way to the first quadrant, which will be 180 degrees. So let's take a look at what happens. Remember, this arrow here is going to go all the way to the top. That's where it's going to end up being. So that'll help us visualize what's going on. So C is going to end up being up in this location here. B is going to be directly below it. And then A, well, A and ABC makes a right angle. So it's going to make a right angle right in here. I know it doesn't go this way because A is in the third quadrant. It needs to go into the first quadrant. And so it is going to end up going right there. And so that's what we end up seeing for our 180 degree rotation. And so this is going to end up being our B value. This is our A. Oops, let's see here. This is our C. And this is our A. So let's check out those points and see if we see the same correlations we did before. So A initially was 4, -4, comma, -3. B was -1, comma, -3. And C was -1, comma, -5. And so when we look at their rotation values, the image for A prime is at 4, 3. And B prime, well, that is at 1, 3. And C prime, well, C prime is at 1, 5. And that matches what our rule says, because notice how all of the x and y values are the same except for sign. And so just the sign switch. And that makes sense because we went from the negative axis to the positive axis. So you're going to see rotations like that. On the homework, you also have to identify some translations and some reflections. So remember, when it asks for types of transformations, and that's what it's going to ask in the beginning of the lesson, you're going to look for these 3 types that we've been dealing with. There's one more, but we'll deal with that in the future sections. But right now, we've only seen the translation. And so remember, a translation is just a slide where the figure ends up moving into a different spot. We've seen a reflection, and the reflection is a mirror image or a flip, where the object flips over an axis. And then now we've seen a rotation. And we think of a rotation as a turn. So those are the types of transformations we've seen. We'll be having to identify some different types of transformations and dealing with rotating some objects. Good luck.